2.
My name's Isla, I'm 8 years old and I'm in Miss Ali's class, grade 3.
My name is Adele and I'm in grade 5. And the first class of the day is Campfire.
Campfire is where you learn feelings, meditation, and how others be friends.
You do drawing and calm and peaceful things to get you ready for the day.
And then there's ELA. ELA, we do spelling, phonemic awareness, and writing words properly, or cursive handwriting.
We're supposed to be learning autobiographies and biographies. If I was playing at recess, I would normally do gymnastics.
My favorite thing in recess is playing basketball and badminton.
After recess, we have Chinese. In Chinese, we've been writing and doing a lot of classwork, and we've also been reading some poems.
You can learn lots of vowels that are Chinese, and you can also draw pictures and write Chinese words on them. And then we have math.
We've been learning about perimeters and areas. So we were supposed to measure the basketball court.
The rotations have spelling of math, word problems, times, plus, divide.
After lunch, we have ECS, which stands for Explore, Create and Share. We're supposed to be learning how to be inventors. We're supposed to be designing and creating things.
On Tuesdays, we have art and PE. In art, we have been trying to make a dragon. We have been recently painting dragon heads and tails.
On Thursdays, we do enrichments, which is like an after-school club.
For enrichments, there's different activities like wushu, cooking, filmmaking, robotics, and chess.
On Friday, we have field trips, and it's one of my favorite days because we get to go outside.
We got to explore our neighborhood a lot, and then we also went to the Jockey Club Cultural Art Center, and we got to saw a really nice exhibit by a really talented photographer.
My favorite thing about Bloom is that we get to express our own feelings. Everybody in my class is actually my friend.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Head Talk with myself, Ruth Benny from Top Schools. And I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by the leadership team of Bloom KKCA Academy. So we have Renee Bowie, founder and head of school, and we have Mei Chan, head advisor of STEM and ECS program, and Andrew Kwan, school supervisor. So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to those of you who are listening. If you have any questions for any of the speakers today, please type them in the chat box. Let's start with yourself, Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Ruth. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I know that, I think we'll get into the details in a little bit, but Bloom is not your traditional school, is that fair to say? And I wanted to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on traditional schools and how Bloom perhaps isn't traditional.
So I would say, well, thank you, Ruth, for asking those questions, and welcome parents, friends, educators, students who are curious about Bloom. I would say one way I think about it is I wouldn't say, I want to caveat by saying I probably wouldn't use the word traditional, but I would say schools kind of, globally speaking, for the last 150 years, they were designed for a specific ethos in mind, right? We had a sort of post-industrial age economy where we needed a lot of, shall we say, sort of like office workers that were sort of given instructions from high-level management and their job was to kind of execute according to the instructions they were given. And that was sort of like how education has been designed for, right? To make sure everyone reaches a certain level of competency in writing, math, executing instructions. So it was very focused on process and execution. But Ruth, as you know better than anybody else, we've entered the sort of really, I would say, even we're a little bit past the information age, right? We're in the age of AI, we're in the age of bioengineering, and it is sort of a creative-driven world where knowledge workers, entrepreneurs, they're no longer necessarily executing instructions given up by some higher management or from the CEO. Every team at every level in a company or in an organization is supposed to be self-driven, self-organizing. And to do that, right, you really sort of need a lot more creativity, a lot more sort of decision-making at the micro level. Everybody needs to be more entrepreneurial. So I would say, because the world has changed, Bloom's mission is to make sure we're readying all the students for that kind of an age and economy where everyone needs to be more entrepreneurial, no matter what profession you're in.
I don't think anyone would dispute that. But do you think that the majority of schools, both in, I think you guys are of background from the States, my background is UK or Hong Kong or Canada, aren't most of the schools still somewhat traditional, to use that word?
So I would say, at least in the great question, Ruth, in the schools that I've attended, there are almost anything but traditional. So I'm very fortunate to have been a graduate of both Harvard University and Stanford University. And I would say sort of, for example, right, Stanford is extremely, extremely innovative in everything they do. We've had one of the earliest computer science departments. I don't know how many tens of years ago, how many decades ago that is, but it's decades and decades ago. But in this decade, I think what they're looking at, even from a computer science perspective, is that computer science should be cross-pollinating with all these other fields. So they started like a computer science plus art program. They started a computer science plus, history program. They started all kinds of these sort of CS plus other subjects kind of a program. To give you an example, and they just started a school on sustainability and climate change, right? They're working on, previously Stanford has been working on climate change for a long time, but it was kind of spread out in different departments. They wanted to really sort of make sure that, all these different faculty from different branches that have something to do with sustainability, whether it's sort of the hardcore tech part, whether it's designing economic systems to incentivize adoption of like renewable energy, for example, are all under sort of like one roof or one initiative. So Ruth, I would, that's a great question. I think majority of schools in the whole world probably are, but I've been really fortunate that most of the schools that I've attended, whether it's at a sort of post K-12 level or the K-12 level, are extremely innovative. So to me, it makes complete sense that Bloom would sort of trailblaze a path for Hong Kong in terms of pushing the envelope of where technology and entrepreneurship and innovation is going.
No, it's a great answer. And I think my question was a little unfair because obviously it's not black and
white. Perfectly fair, and I love your question.
All of the schools that we talk to are somewhere on the continuum of innovation. But I just want to remind everyone that's listening, and this is cribbed from your website, your school prioritizes the mindsets and skills of adaptable innovators and equips students with at least 2 world languages, self-agency, global competence, and the desire to contribute. There's a lot in there. And I want to turn now to Renee Bowie, founder and head of the school. Hi, Renee.
Hi, Ruth. Thank you so much for having us.
No, it's a pleasure. So how do you do this at Bloom? Is that your mission statement?
It is. I mean, we're designing a school of innovation, a bilingual school of innovation. And I think just to respond to what Andrew said, it's great to even talk among our own leadership teams because I get inspired by them. He mentioned ethos. And I think really what we're responding to and trying to create is a different ethos. So what we're doing is we're trying to deliberately, intentionally give students and teachers the time, the space, the environment and culture to develop those 21st century skills that we all hear about all the time. Because I think many schools recognize that these are important skills, but the struggle is to find the space and the time for that. And then of course, for the leadership and the whole school to have the desire to teach those skills. So instead of clinging on to an old curriculum and relentlessly testing students on them, by doing that, you really cannot achieve the mental agility and the collaborative thinking that we're talking about here. So for us, it's not just about adding on a great STEM program and hiring, a great STEM advisor, but it's in the fundamental design of the school, thinking about how to prepare for that future. So yes, it is at the heart of our mission.
So, and I know a lot of schools are doing a lot of amazing things, but I know you're talking about design skills and design thinking. These are terms that we hear, and I think as parents, we probably don't fully understand them. Could you explain how you're implementing that?
Yes. So design thinking is an approach to problem solving that actually started decades ago in the 70s, maybe even before then, and was popularized by the Stanford Design School, by companies like IDEO and people like David Kelly and his brother, Tom Kelly. And but it's really been adopted across many different sectors now. In fact, people are evolving away from design thinking as well, but there are definitely real strengths to it that reflect the problems of our time and how to respond. So it begins with having empathy, defining a problem, the scope of a problem, ideation, and coming up with ideas in a generative and productive, fruitful way, and then creating and prototyping, and then testing it, and then iterating. So we have our own version of that in a class that we called Explore, Create, Share, because we're an educational institution and not like a consultancy or design firm. So for us, it's about teaching students to engage with this process of problem solving. And we challenge our students to explore real world issues, whether it's like this week in our summer program, we're looking at how to live sustainably in Hong Kong and looking at water. We looked at land the week before, and we'll look at farm to table next week. And I was saying, like, we give them the time and space. So we have the class time, but we also have and facilities. We have a wonderful maker space, a STEAM lab, a food tech lab, our garden, and actually we have weekly field trips. So really the whole city is our campus, is our facility, so to speak. And we also have things like Campfire and Forest School and a STEM-focused science term in terms of giving these skills time and time to practice the design thinking skills. And I'm sure May can share more details about that.
Yeah, I think that's very familiar. If I personally would call it a more of an inquiry-based program. And so let me try to contextualize that for parents. I think we're more familiar with that phrase. You are using the IPC, which is the International Primary Curriculum, which is an inquiry-based program, is it not?
Yes, it is. I will say that we're actually becoming an IPC school. So we're about to launch into both IPC and we have a pilot secondary program. We have IMYC, the International Middle Years Program. And the idea, though, even this year, we've been approaching it very similar to IPC, which is you take a theme and you approach it from many different angles, cross disciplines. So for example, the most recent unit we looked at the post-pandemic world, and say for the grade 5-6 students, they looked at a century later, how might the human species survive if it were plagued by pandemics, and they looked into exploring space. And so everything from in robotics, learning how to program VEX Martian rovers, to looking at what type of food we might need, like how to dry food, and going to visit these hoi mei, which are the dried seafood stores that you see on streets in Hong Kong, to the Space Museum, reading the novel The Martian. So I hope that gives you like a concrete idea of how we actually execute these units. And the IPC is a wonderful curriculum aligned with UK standards that gives us this backbone. And we take that as a starting off point. And the wonderful thing is it's a very modular and you can add to it. It's not limiting at all, but gives us this platform.
Yeah, it's actually becoming more common, particularly in Hong Kong. It does make sense. And I know that we're going to go into a little bit more detail with some of those like weekly field trips, etc. with May. I just want to ask you, I'm not sure how much you want to say about this, the planning for the secondary program and the curriculum there. Say whatever you would like to say.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're really excited about the secondary because the primary is building the foundation and the creative mindset. It's so important to retain that creativity that children, everyone is born with. It's just natural. Schools sometimes can squeeze it out of us, but if we give them that time and space, we keep it alive and we give them opportunities to build skills around that creativity. Then by middle school, we're talking about projects where you need more research. You need more understanding of what's already being done. So we have speakers come in, we still have field trips, but the IMYC adds to the academic depth of the projects. And then we transition to, in terms of exit qualifications, the IGCSE and the A levels. So it's a UK aligned curriculum beginning with the IMYC. Well, actually, technically the IPC, but our core academic subjects in primary school are not entirely just UK aligned, more globally aligned. And we chose the A levels because of actually the options that it provides. So not everyone in our school wants to go to the UK. Many do want to apply to the US or North America or Australia or even within Asia. But I think the A levels is globally very well recognized. And I love how, because it doesn't require as many subjects for graduation as, say, something like the IB, which is also, of course, an excellent curricular choice, it gives us more room as an innovative school to innovate and to add our own curriculum. For example, we have a very core program, which is our entrepreneurship program. And we're actually powered by Cocoon Foundation, the leading entrepreneurship education institute in Hong Kong, funded by the Jockey Club. And they've already done this in over 40 schools. So part of, Andrew is also an advisor. I'm an advisor in Cocoon. And we've been actually really working closely with them from the start and really wanting to. So there are all these programs that are plugged into schools and expose students to these ideas, but we want to be a school of entrepreneurship where it's embedded in our culture. So I think that's, so stay tuned. We have a pilot program. Maybe I'll say a word about it at the end about how to find out more, but mainly it's that it's the continuation, extension of what we're already doing with our primary school, which currently goes up to grade 6. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, we can open grade 7 by next year, 7 to 9 by next year.
Yeah, no, excellent news that it will be a through school.
Same location as well, hopefully. Yes.
Same location. I mean, it's not, A levels are not known for their innovation, if I may say. So are you saying that, you know, a student could maybe manage 3 A levels and then have room and space and time to do all of that innovation that you would provide on top?
I'm glad you asked that. That's a very pertinent and astute question. If you asked me 2 years ago whether we would choose A levels, I would probably have said no.
I was surprised. Yeah.
And after exploring all these different available recognized options, I think it actually reflects the spirit of our school, which is to strike a balance between East and West, between what works classically and what is progressive, in order to find the right way to deal with the future. So we're not trying to be novel or new for newness sake. We really want to keep what's working and continue on and give our kids more options. Many students will want to go to traditional mainstream colleges. Those schools, like Andrew was saying, many of them are actually becoming very innovative. So getting in is, while traditional, is not straightforward. And I think that they do still require, though, a recognized exit qualification exam, right? So I think that learning how to master those types of assessments is something that we teach. We don't shy away from. It's a reality of the system. So we're sort of about being smart about it and contextualizing it. It is a part of education. For better or worse, it is there. So how do you cope smartly with it so that it doesn't affect your social, emotional, mental health in an all-consuming way? And for people who are maybe a little less inclined to just be purely academic, what are the other options that can still help you thrive? Not still, but actually could be your ticket to your own flourishing and success. So it's this balanced view, and A levels allows us to actually focus on 3 subjects. I think that's a very sensible number. There's of course also the EPQs with A levels for extended research and work. And there's it's a time-tested, test with a lot of resources and a teaching network around it. So there are many benefits for our teachers as well. And similar to the IPC, having that backbone gives parents some level of reassurance and gives us that liberty to then innovate and do all these other things on top of it or in parallel.
Yeah, that's a really interesting response, Renee. Yeah, as a mother of children about to embark on the A-level program, it does make perfect sense. I want to bring May into the conversation. Hi, May, waiting patiently.
Hi, Ruth.
How are you?
For having us. Yeah, great.
When I
just want to say that it's wonderful to be invited to be part of the founding team. I think the fact that I'm being invited here already says a lot about us being an innovative school. Yeah. So because May, I'm not traditional trained as a teacher. Yeah.
Right, I see. So May, you're here as head advisor of STEM and ECS program. So when I first read ECS, I'm thinking extracurricular, and what's the S? What's the S? So Renee's already touched on it. ECS, tell us what that is at Bloom, May.
ECS is our version of project-based learning, but is a really thoughtful way of presenting it, especially for primary, because we take the Stanford design thinking model, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and some of our audience might, and I think Andrew mentioned it lightly, in terms of its steps, empathize, and then design, ideate, test, prototype test, very similar, and then combine that together with the engineering design process, which adds another dimension of communication in there. And then, of course, if you just do additive, it's going to be way too complicated for primary. So we simplified it into explore, create, share. And what I love about it is that if you go to our website, you'll see that diagram that we draw for each step. In the middle, there is a really nice chunk that is called reflect. And I think that is brings back in what Renee was saying about, that positive thinking, that learning from failure, that not being afraid of A-level exams later on when they're there, is that when we are going through each step and there is a reflection cycle, then students always have a chance to learn from their mistakes. And that's what we want to encourage, especially in the younger age.
So just to play devil's advocate for a moment though, but isn't it sort of the same as an ECA program or extracurricular? Children have always done extra sports, music, arts and crafts, whatever. Is it different, or is it similar, or is the reflection?
No, it's definitely different. I think part of it is that having me, a decade of experience in Silicon Valley with like Lockheed Martin, working for NASA, Microsoft, I basically learned about, iterative design, iterative improvement, right? You never have failures, you just have prototypes. You just keep increasing in your model. And that is beautifully designed into our Bloom KKCA primary program, in that we have morning, as you saw in the video earlier, that was such a, I love watching that video, is that in the morning, there's English, math, Chinese, right? The explicit teaching. And then in afternoon, we do our ECS, we do the arts and design, and we do our projects. We go to the makerspace, as Renee has mentioned, we got makerspace, the STEAM room, the food tech lab, the vertical farm, the community farm, the mindfulness room. All these different theme rooms are meant to be used daily. And that's because you have that cycle, right, where you have the explicit learning in the morning and then the applied learning in the afternoon to solidify the foundation, so that it's not just memorization, but actually, digestion of the information and then really applying it. And I call that really the, iterative design that is very much similar to, rapid prototyping, all those different models that is very typical of engineering lingo. And then additionally, of course, Renee already mentioned about the weekly field trip. And you know, I guess you might ask, why weekly? Why does it have to be so frequent? It goes back into the explore portion, right? If you don't explore enough, you cannot collect enough big data. And every single one of us, this is our big data processor. And if you don't expose the students to enough of their community, the local problems, you know, even the weather, you let them feel the weather, how hot it is, you know, and understand climate change, right? Let them feel the rain. All that comes into that observational skill, which is it's so much about that explore stage, especially in primary.
Yeah. And it is so lacking in many of Hong Kong's more, you know, traditional schools. Sorry to use that word again. I'm going to come back to Renee to ask a couple more questions. For those of you who are watching, if you have any questions for our panelists, I believe that there's a chat box or some way for you to ask, and we'll ask them live. What was I going to ask? So you talked about the ECS and the weekly field trips. Oh, Renee, I have a question probably for you, but whoever, feel free. How do you equip teachers? How do you hire teachers and train them and bring them on board? Because let's face it, they're not quite trained for this type of teaching, are they?
That's a great question. It's definitely true that part of the reason why schools have evolved so slowly is this precise problem. And I would argue that teacher education is actually at the heart of educational reform. And I cannot say that I am already an expert in all of this, and very much I myself have a learner and growth mindset. It's about having the heart and the vision and the direction right. And then you really reach out for help. And I think that's why we have so many advisors. I think we're a bit unlike other schools that maybe emphasize their board. We, of course, very much respect and love our board, but I think we also rely on and seek the help of educators as advisors. For example, from High Tech High, we have Larry Rosenstock, who is the founder of High Tech High and the principal for like 2 decades. And they're one of the leading project-based learning schools in the world. And also, people like Orly Friedman, who worked at Khan Lab School, was the head of their lower school there, advising us, working with our teachers and leadership team, giving us their time, their advice. They're also building schools and advising schools. So it's great to see what's happening in other parts of the world as well. Going on a lot of school visits. I've visited over 30 innovative schools and researched, our whole team has researched many of them. And we share our insights, right? I mean, that's the great thing about education. It is itself collaborative. So it's not competitive. I think it's about like, if you have a way of doing something, on Twitter, like teachers love to share. And so that's another way, but the curation, I think, is how we add value for our team. Because yes, it's all out there, but just as students are challenged by the overwhelming abundance of information, so are professional teachers, and they have a full-on job. So I think my role and the leadership team's role is to actually highlight the areas that we need to focus on at different periods. So we're in the period of setting up the school, and the systems and the culture matter the most. So I think right now that's our focus, figuring out the balance between traditional academics, which you need. I mean, if you can't read and write, what project can you do? Who would ever hire you to do anything? So, the basics you must have, and there are time-tested ways to do that. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel for some things, but there's also evolving research, even on reading and the brain, and even, leading people, experts in literacy are challenged periodically. So I think that it's our job to be aware of the research, the trends, and then to direct their attention. So social emotional learning and mental health, for example, for this past year with the 5th wave, was a huge area of focus. And normally that may not have been the first thing to come to mind in an innovative school. But I think that taking care of our own staff well-being and our student well-being was and is a core primary concern right now. So So how do we do it? We obviously also try to hire people who have experience starting up innovative schools, who have backgrounds in arts, design, sustainability, and also that desire to really be in a school where you have to roll up your sleeves, go on field trips every week. I mean, it sounds good in theory, but when you have to lead 50 kids on a field trip in the heat, figure out logistics, even crossing the road safely, it's a lot of stress. So it isn't for everyone, I have to say. But I think that over time, when we get used to this approach, a lot of things about the pedagogy will make more sense to people. And parents also have to adjust to what a school day looks like, what the home learning looks like, what assessments look like, report cards, what they look like. All of that, I think, incrementally, we have to test and we have to change and keep improving on. So having the teachers who already have some experience, either working at an IB school, an inquiry-based school with IPC, or people who come in with this hunger, this creative energy and wanting to learn, that's really, I think, the secret to this. And I hope more schools get to have this experience.
Yeah, it feels for a family to join your school or for teachers to join your school, there's an element of joining a movement in a way. We probably should have started to give some stats. Obviously, your primary school, you opened last year in Sham Shui Po. How many students on the roster currently, Renee?
We have 54 students.
And growing this year?
Entering this year, we have close to 80 students.
Amazing.
We have rolling admissions, so hopefully that number will grow as well.
Of course, and we have some opportunities for parents to visit you and chat with you at the end of this talk today. One of the skills that you've identified as necessary for future is proficiency in Chinese language. So I'm not sure which of you would like to take this on. Obviously, it's a skill that's very much in demand. Hong Kong is almost unique in its linguistic background, I feel. So yeah, interesting that you are a bilingual school. And what does that mean for you at Bloom?
I will start, but I really will turn it over, give my time to May and Andrew. Andrew's Chinese is far superior to mine. And May is also fluent in Putonghua and integrates it into ECS, which I think is remarkable and unique for our school. I think the philosophy behind it is that we're serving not abstract people, but people who live in Hong Kong. Whatever their backgrounds, we have a very diverse population, but we all share one thing: we live in the city. So we want to prepare kids for the future of this region. We want them to serve the planet and the world, but they will be living somewhere, right? And so we know that the Greater Bay Area offers many opportunities for culture, for work, for life opportunities, and to access that and to really communicate, assimilate, and to enjoy all of that, you do need to have some language skills. You may not have to be a native speaker, but it's similar to English as a global language. I think Chinese is becoming increasingly so, and that's why we make it a bilingual. And so that means in terms of class time, campfire, field trips, all of that is alternating between, in terms of time, 50-50, and alternating between the Chinese medium team and the English medium team. And we have many bilingual teachers as well. So I'm going to turn it over to May and Andrew, whoever wants to speak first.
Let's come to Andrew first, shall we?
Well, thank you, Ruth. Rather great question. I think May can speak about some of the particulars, but I would say our mission is to kind of go beyond bilingualism, right? As you know, Ruth, sort of linguistics or language is kind of access to deeper levels of, for example, culture. So I tend to think of it at least as a stacked or pyramid model, and we aspire to get beyond the bilingual kind of a mindset towards a bicultural kind of a mindset, where your language, you're empowered by language to access deeper understanding about cultures, whether it's history, whether it's art, whether it's philosophy, sort of things that are sort of deeper beyond language. And I think May can talk about maybe some of the particulars around that, but thank you for asking this question, Ruth.
No, there's a term I read many years ago, which is lingua culture. You can't truly understand the language unless you also understand the culture. I can't remember who wrote it, but so May, you work this into all of the
ECS. Yes, yes. Actually, with an amazing team of teachers, especially our Chinese team. So in our last term, we, due to COVID, because of field trip restrictions, we did a lot more with our vertical farm and community farm, and making sure that they still,
vertical farm. Sorry,
vertical farm. Yeah, like where we basically have them build it vertical farm where the plants can, water each other, self-watering bottles that are recycled from plastic bottles, actually upcycled. We have each student actually make it their own, and some of them even brought it home.
Aquaponics.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
But the reason why I don't use the term aquaponics is you could also still have soil for vertical farm. Yeah. So sorry about that. I was running ahead of myself. So I was talking about the Chinese bilingual portion. So what we did is, remember how Renee was mentioning about our post-pandemic theme. And we were reading The Martian for ELA. Well, in CLA, we studied about all the different ways that food is being preserved throughout Chinese history and Chinese culture. And believe me, there are tons. And Hong Kong being basically a port and an island historically, right? There's so much fishery, and that's why we went to Xiangwan and walked the entire Hoi Mei Gai, which is basically the street with all the dried food from more exotic ones like a dried seahorse to less exotic ones such as nuts and just berries. But it helped them understand the entire context. And then what's so amazing about learning the culture is that later on, for doing an entire model of sort of like The Martian, we decided as a class to plant sweet potatoes instead of potatoes. And the students were able to justify why. It's because in Chinese culture, we can eat the leaves of sweet potatoes. So you don't have to wait nearly as long as you would have to, as in the movie, for eating the potatoes. So that's really about that culture aspect that Andrew was mentioning, so that it's not only studying the history and the culture of Chinese food preservation that inspired them, but that ECS, the explore, create, share, the create part, now you can see how it comes into fruition in sweet potatoes.
Yeah. So in terms of the diversity of the school, and what are the sort of requirements for children to either have an amount of Chinese or English to enter and to access the curriculum, what would you say to that? Is that a question for you, Renee?
Sure. So we do have an assessment, and it does include Chinese from grade 1 onwards. And I would say that the requirement for grade 1 to 3 is rather low, the threshold, because the whole point is we're here to teach you. But at the same time, we also, for older students, I think people don't need to be too intimidated, because it's about the desire, the family's choice to want their children to have this exposure and immersion, because we actually have a pathway that is Chinese for non-native speakers. So we call it Chinese additional language and Chinese as a main language. So I think that makes it a lot more accessible. And of course, like if we're going on a field trip, you're listening to it and people are speaking it, but like nobody's forcing you to speak it. But ideally, the idea is that the more you hear it, the more natural it becomes. And it's the contextual, practical use of the language that you're getting exposure to. So that's, so I think that it's less about your capacity, your capability and proficiency, but more about that family's desire to have that.
Seems like quite an inclusive approach to welcoming families who opt into that, to what you're offering.
Yes.
We are running out of time. I just want to ask you, we spoke, I think, when you were at the very, very beginning of this journey, even before you opened the school, and it's now been operational for an entire year. So many congratulations. Maybe we could end with maybe each of you, just a highlight, which is one of the highlights in action, Bloom in action from your first year.
May, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll go first because I'm all about the practical applications. So yeah, we in the other grades I didn't highlight is actually grade 3 and 4 for the post-pandemic theme, which we just because of the 5th wave, to be honest, we just adjust the entire theme because we were supposed to do Hong Kong history, and then we're like, okay, the present is so going to be, memorable for the child's growth that we have to change the theme. So we did. So that adaptive was really awesome. And then second thing is that the grade 3, 4, their theme end up with the driving question was about how do we make sure that Earth and sustainability and adaptability survive with post-pandemic. And with that driving question, the students were so creative that we end up doing a project on hybrid animal design in terms of what kind of superpowers would these hybrid animal need to have in order to flourish, not only survive, but flourish in the post-pandemic world. And I want to bring that in simply because it's a great combination of imagination, which emphasize design thinking and things that are not robotic and not teachable simply by regurgitation, but really just by doing it again and again and again by practice. Combining that imagination, creativity, together with the practicality of what they have learned so far. What does it mean by self-sustaining? Even the word self-sustaining was what they were learning. So all that, that was great. Hybrid animals. Yeah.
Amazing. Andrew?
Thank you, Ruth. It's been a fast year, that happened. But sort of out of many highlights, one of them I would say is one of the top 3 local universities had a professor reach out to us and say, hey, we're trying to, metaverse technologies is going to be important. And we're trying to see if there are ways to adapt sort of like a college level course, but all the way down to really something that's just, introduction, leveled right for a primary kind of an audience. And they reached out and say, hey, would you, we know that you have a reputation for, both being run by really innovative folks, for innovative parents who are looking for innovative solutions for an innovative world. Can we work with you? Can we bring a program? Can we pilot a program with you to see if your students might like sort of this metaverse, some simple metaverse workshops leveled for their age. And so I think that to me, that's even within a single year of coming online, that's proof from some of the top educators that, hey, you're doing some great work. We want to work together. So I'm really grateful to the whole team to what they have accomplished in just 1 year. I know they have done a lot more work before this 1 year of coming online, but I think this 1 year alone has already made a lot of progress. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, great endorsement. And finally, Renee, one of your highlights.
I think it would be the Forest School Week. So this is a signature program of our school. We have a lot of nature expeditions all the time, but this is a full day, 7 days in nature. And this coming year, we are going to add overnight trips as well. And basically, I loved it because we're a school about innovation and sustainability. Sustainability is this abstract, multisyllabic word that like, for kids, it's like, what? But we want them to first know what we're protecting and understanding direct experience of nature, just being out there, seeing the beauty of it, spending time, not rushed, not a 3-hour hike, but just the full day learning music, learning Chinese, science, all of that, sitting on the grass, having time to learn zip lining, archery. Some kids learn to bike for the first time. And we saw sides of our students that we'd never seen before. They collaborated cross grades, enjoyed each other's company, the team, our staff bonded. And I think it's like whetting their appetite about why it matters to protect this world, to enjoy each other and to come together as a community to do that. So I really look forward to the next Forest School adventure that we have. And yeah, that was a major highlight.
It's amazing. Ryan, if you can put the slide up for sharing, for opportunities to connect. But while Ryan does that, it's just, it occurs to me that innovation and sustainability are almost sort of odd bedfellows, but I wouldn't necessarily put them together. When you think of a school of innovation, you think tech, but you're respecting the nature, which is typically a lot of Reggio. It's so interesting, and I'm so pleased that
yeah,
so pleased that you shared that with those that joined live today, this afternoon. Thank you for joining, and for all of those that will watch this on the catch up. It's been such an interesting discussion. Thank you to Renee Bowie, Mei Chan, and Andrew Kwan from Bloom KKCA Academy. There are 3 ways that you can connect with the school: join an upcoming school tour, join an upcoming info session where there's more great content just like we've had this afternoon, or speak to one of the admissions team directly, and we will share this with all of those that registered and couldn't make it, and for anyone else as well. I'm so excited to come back and see you guys. I'm out of quarantine in a few days, and please invite me. And thank you for joining us this afternoon. All right, have a good rest of the day. Okay, over and out.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.